Today we're here with Lydia Hudgens. Hi, Lydia. Lydia is an amazing photographer based in New York. Lydia and I share a lot of our aesthetic, a lot of our vision, a lot of our passion for inclusivity and representation and empowering women through our photography. We met the last time that I was in New York. We had a really awesome chat. So I wanted to share some parts of that chat with everybody. And bring her on here. So thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Just enjoying the slightly cooler New York day.
I bet it's been
Yeah.
a tough summer.
Yeah, it's been pretty hot, so I'm very happy that it's a little cooler now.
Yeah, for sure. So today, I just kind of wanted to chat a little bit about the projects that you're working on, and also I think people will find it quite interesting to just hear us chat about our thoughts on the industry, the demand or the lack of demand for the plus bigger sizes, and yeah, just to chat a little bit from our perspective, doing a fairly similar role that we both kind of do, just in the different markets. I'm in London and you're in New York, so I think that's quite interesting to share our different experiences and how the industry
Yeah.
is different in both places.
I know here in the States, it's definitely been quite slow. I'm actually currently working on a coffee table book that's plus size specific. And the models that I've shot for the book have come in to my studio and I'm like, wow, this is the first time I've been on set in months. And I'm like, that's so depressing to hear. That was more so in the beginning to the middle of the year. People are starting to slowly get work now, I think, as the seasons are shifting and transitioning. But it definitely was very, very slow for a long time. I know a lot of the models that I know that were very full-time models beforehand are now transitioning, getting jobs, starting content, working UGC sort of things as well, which in case anyone's not familiar with UGC, it's basically when brands pay you to produce content for them, whether it be video or photos or I guess that's the context, I would say. But yeah, UGC in that context. And yeah, a lot of people have just been a lot slower. And so I've definitely noticed a downtick. Also on my own personal sets, I've noticed that the largest models have a tendency to be around 12, 14, which previously it was 16 to 18, occasionally a 20. But it's definitely taken a downtick in terms of that too. So, and I have noticed, I'm sure, I don't know about, where you are, but I've also noticed even on boards, a lot of the models have a tendency to be around no larger than a size 16.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's been interesting because and I know obviously you've worked really closely with agencies as well, so you have that knowledge, and so have I in the past, and it's there's been quite a big 180, obviously when the rise of the curve and it became much more mainstream and it kind of peaked in demand, the agencies really couldn't get enough girls in their board, all the sizes. I wouldn't go as far as saying the bigger the better, but definitely the 16s,
There was a
right?
good size for sure,
hovering on the bigger side of the plus of the curve. And it's crazy to see now the boards have halved in size. Obviously the demand is not there as much. However, you do see the rare occasional model doing a really big job that maybe before would have only been Ashley Graham maybe doing the job.
Yeah.
And now that is trickling down to other less celebrity based models. Ashley Graham at the end of the day obviously is a model, but is also celebrity status.
Yeah. At this point, before, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm seeing other models, there aren't celebrity status booking these amazing campaigns. I think there's a Pandora campaign. I've seen a couple of perfume campaigns that also have these stunning curvy models, but the rest is really drying up, and definitely the bigger models are also, I've seen also a lot of bigger models losing a lot of weight to try and
Yeah, I mean,
try and like get into that, like, which obviously for me and I know for you too, is like a very, what's the word, like a very a huge toxic impact of like the whole diet culture, and then like just the fear
yeah,
of losing work and losing
for
jobs
sure.
really
And
taking impact.
that it's interesting that you bring up the brands that you did bring up, because most of those I assume are like within the like perfume, the beauty industry. So like they're not even like
Yeah.
a fashion brand.
Yeah.
Um, and because a lot of that as well too, I feel like I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed too, is like a lot of the brands that used to be very big in plus size inclusivity in terms of how they represented. So like we're talking Skims, we're talking Good American, Old Navy, like all those brands. I feel, not that Old Navy is like a high fashion brand, but they are like, they had that whole like 0 to 40 thing that they
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
and now they don't even carry plus in store. So it's been an interesting like shift in that. Like I think the big campaigns that plus models are getting are not fashion related anymore. It's
No.
all like smaller brands, or it's like an underwear campaign, but then the underwear, like, I mean, like maybe it's a Fenty campaign or something, but even then I don't think Fenty really shows like plus size
No.
in their like editorials. It's mostly like ecom.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure why. Like, I don't quite understand, especially like brands like Fenty, brands like Skims, brands like Good American. Like, they were literally born
Yeah.
where all they were hammering onto us, like all their marketing, their whole ethos
Well,
was
because it was
that
trending at that point.
inclusivity.
I mean,
Yeah, but
inclusivity
even
was
if it
trending.
and 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 that's fine. Like I can understand that from like a marketing and like a branding and a market point of view, but why not continue that? Like why would you
Yeah.
kind of go against your own loyal buyers and like your own loyal like customers? That's the part that I'm not quite sure I can like understand. Like I get the other brands that have done like the token plus
Yeah.
girl or the token campaign here and there, and then the trend has kind of like died down and they've just gone back to like, oh well, nobody's kind of looking
I
anymore,
know
so let's go back to the straight
it
size.
is pretty interesting too with Skims and Good American, because I've taken a deep dive in their social, and I think like the largest size that I've seen is like a 12, 14, and it's like one every six
Shocking.
months. And then if you go on their website, their e-commerce websites, they don't even feature plus size models anymore, really. It's like maybe an 8 to 10. And they used to do that thing where you could see it in your size, and that's no longer really an option. And I'm like, I have heard from a few people too, and I think Diet Prada did like a whole expose on it where they were talking about how it's literally just, it started to take a downtick in terms of like the actual items and being produced, like in terms of what's actually been purchased. So like from a brand standpoint, like they're not selling as many units of plus size anymore. And so they've stopped advertising it. But the thing is if you don't, if I don't know you're selling my size, I'm not going to buy it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like a second, I don't know. And I'm like, I do understand that a lot of people are currently on this Ozempic like rise, and like the weight loss thing has definitely taken an uptick.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are losing weight and trying to actively lose weight, which I also think has a factor to do with it, because people are not going to be apt to buy new items if they're working on their goal
They're
size.
losing, yeah, yeah. They're
You
losing
know what I
sizes,
mean?
yeah.
So like I do think that like, yes, I want to say fuck the brands. Sorry. I want to say like I'm like it's the brands that have the issue, but I do think it's sort of a circular argument as well, and it is a deeper issue within societal too, because like as women we're told like we have to get down to our goal weight, and like most people don't purchase very many items when they're trying to lose weight. You know?
Just the rise of like the weight loss culture as well, like um I don't know, like I think it's something that like any trend is definitely a trend, a
Yeah.
very unhealthy, toxic trait, but it a trend, but it is a trend. And I think eventually it will sit somewhere in the middle where like, a few years ago it was all about like body positivity, embracing like your body, your flaws, your size, like all kind of like the opposite, and now we've gone
Yeah.
down the opposite. And that's just a marketing tool. Like all the women that were buying like bigger sizes and like their own actual size, now they're gonna have to buy like all these other things because you're being
Yeah.
influenced. And then like 2 years down the line, it'll be like, oh, whatever the hell we'll find then, just like something else. And then you have
I
to
mean,
buy like a whole lot of something else.
I will say I think that we're already shifting. I want to say that I'm starting to feel a little positive because I've had this conversation with a couple other friends, and like while I do continue to get discouraged by things certain times, and I do feel like a brand are still not really like being super size inclusive. I have seen more conversations about this kind of topic more and more and more. And also like people are starting to talk about the downsides of taking Ozempic, about
Mhm.
how thin it makes your face and how gaunt it makes your face and how it's actually aging people. And like I do think that I do think like Ozempic, like if you take it correctly and you do exactly what the doctors tell you, because you're supposed to like lift weights and like keep your body healthy and not just take the drug and let the drug do the work. But you're going to get that like crazy Ozempic face if you don't. So I'm like, I do think I'm starting to see more and more about that. And I'm like, I think people are like leaning into another change,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that change is coming. It has been interesting because I feel like I've been having this conversation a lot the last like 6 to 8 months in terms of like where I think the industry is at. And I will say like even watching like Fashion Week, not so much in New York, but and if we're thinking like London overseas and stuff, I feel like I saw a lot more plus size models. Carolina Vito, I believe is how you pronounce
We
her
love
brand.
her. Yeah.
Obsessed with that. The entire show is curve models. And there was
Yeah.
a range. It was like a size 8
Yeah.
to like a size like 18, 20, I want to say US. And I think that's great, you know.
I
So I'm
think
like, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I think just to add to that, I think Copenhagen Fashion Week was also for the first time like quite
Oh yeah.
renowned in their inclusivity this year. From like age, disability, size, like I think they did a really good job. And yeah, in London, like it is more inclusive maybe than in New York, but at the same time, it's also just a handful of designers. If
Yeah.
you go outside that handful of designers that had a handful of people in them, apart from Carolina Vita, like she had the whole thing. Um,
I'm not
and I
that
think Nancy
familiar.
Dojanka as well. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but there's a couple that really go for it. Then there's a handful that kind of like dip their toes in, yeah, sprinkle it in, and then there's like the other brands like, and it's usually the more mainstream, like higher end fashion houses that just won't fucking do it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. It's not been a step back for sure this year, which is good because last year was quite concerning that even though we weren't where we are now with like this whole talk about like Ozempic and like smaller sizes and all of that, it was still way less representation.
Yeah.
And everybody was just a bit like,
What?
where are
Yeah.
they? What is going on? Why did we go back? So it's nice to see that it's coming back. I don't know like how much New York has done that this season though.
I didn't really notice a ton of it. And like usually like prior seasons I used to do street style. I was like I shot like the a plus size only street style gallery for a couple years. And I mean I don't do that anymore because I feel like if I went outside, I have foot problems, but also like even if I tried, I feel like the last season, I think I saw maybe 2 or 3 people, and it's like at that point, I'm shooting the same 2 or 3 people over and over and over again, and I'm like, that's really telling that there's like two or
Mhm.
three people even getting invited, right?
Yeah.
Versus previous years, there was a ton of people, and so it's definitely been interesting, and also like the people that used to be plus that are no longer really plus. I've definitely noticed a lot of that too. Really big influencers that have lost a ton of weight as well. And like, yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting change of conversation. So,
Yeah.
because a lot of the people too and I actually had this conversation today with a friend talking about the idea of like someone who used to be plus that was like if we're talking about like Remy Bader, for instance, like
Okay.
she was like plus size and then she lost a bunch of weight. I'm assuming by Ozempic or something of that sort, because she did talk about being on Ozempic previously. And it's still kind of like talking about you know, plus size and inclusivity. And I'm like, but you're a size 6 now. So like I think it's an interesting conversation to have, whether or not that person can continue to have a conversation or like to push for it, or
Mm.
if they should allow that space to be taken off by someone who's actually plus size too, you know? So
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I've spoken to a couple of girls that not through Ozempic, but actually just like naturally and different diet and like different lifestyle and stuff, like have just changed size over the years. Also, when you know for somebody for like 10 years, it is also
their
absolutely
bodies are going to
normal
change.
that you
Yeah.
just shift sizes and you know, sometimes you're just more muscular, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're this. So, you know, that kind of thing. Not so maybe not so drastic as going from
Yeah.
like such a big size to a 6, but um yeah, it's one, like there's a lot of guilt around them feeling like they shouldn't lose
Yeah.
the weight because
It's
of
a
just
very
like being
nuanced,
loyal to,
it's a
yeah,
very nuanced conversation because I'm like, and
yeah,
not
it's
saying that,
tricky.
yeah, it's not to say that Remy feels that way. I know nothing about
Mm-mm.
Remy. I'm just was using her as an example. But I do think that like for someone that's been pushing very hard for inclusivity their entire career, um, and then to have lost weight, and then you're kind of at this impasse where you're like, you're not quite accepted by straight size people, and you're not quite accepted by plus size people, but you're still continuing to try to have a career and push as much as you can. Or in a model sense as well too, because there's a few models that have lost quite a bit of weight, but they're now sandwiched between the two, and they're
Yeah.
not fitting into straight sizes and they're not fitting into plus size anymore. So like I think a lot of them are not working as much as they probably thought they were going to be, you know?
No. But also like, so where do you stand like with the models, like, because at the end of the day, like if you were bigger, no matter what size you end up being or what size you are right now, but like if you were bigger, you've experienced that in your experience, like maybe you've had your whole life of being a size like 16, 18, and you have that knowledge of like what it is, what it's like, and what it's like to like go shopping and go like find your size and find your fit and feel good and feel seen and all of those things. um, so I had that conversation with one of the model friends, and it was such a tricky thing because obviously she has those experiences. She can still talk from experience, and she can still be like empowering other women and still want to kind of push for that like body positivity aspect of like accepting your body shape and your size and like all of those
Yeah.
things. But yeah, it's very difficult to kind of like reconcile that with then that coming from somebody that's like purposely lost weight.
Or
But
even
I
not
think,
purposely too, because there
well,
are
sometimes
people
not,
that,
yeah.
and you know, I do think this is also a conversation that I've seen around multiple influencers and like models that have lost a lot of weight. um you know, and there's been like one, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to like blow her up, but there was one model that actually got really sick during COVID, and she was a big plus size model for many years, just in terms of like she was well known, and then she lost a ton of weight because she got COVID and was bedridden for like months. She got very sick and lost a ton. She was like down to a 0.2, and she started blowing up, like doing huge campaigns, walking for like Chanel and like all these crazy brands. And that, you know, there was definitely like, I'm sure that fucked with her. You know what I mean? To like go from like this place where you had all of like the brands that you used to work with, and now you can no longer work for them, and now you're being like thrown into this other world. And I do feel like she started to put on a little bit of weight recently because she started to feel a little healthier and like probably more like herself. And then there's like that middle area that's got to fuck with you. You know what I mean? If you're going from one extreme to the other. And what was that one model that like years ago, I forget what her name was, but she was one of the Crystal Wren. She was a big plus size model. Yeah, she was huge for years. She used to be like very thin, and then she came out and she wrote a book about being plus and like how like the modeling industry was super toxic. And so she gained weight, she became plus size, and she started working a ton. I believe she's back to being straight size again. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the mind, like just it being so like crazy to be in that headspace where you've been in one community and in one like size run, especially in such like a public eye, and now going from the other where you're ultimately like, and the community too, I think is like very toxic sometimes in terms of the way they treat people, and like they kind of hold you to a certain size, and if you lose that weight or gain weight in any way, they kind of judge you for it a little bit, or not so much a judgment, but they kind of like there's an expectation that you'll remain
like accountable for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's also like it's a little bit of that like you're never going to please everybody, because at the same time, if you are on the plus size, right, or if you started as like on a bigger size, you get shit for that.
Yeah.
That's just like, you just get shit
Just
for
from a
that
different
anyway. You're on the
community.
public eye. Yeah. And then if you lose the weight, you get shit for that as well. If you gain back, you get shit for that as well. So do you know what I mean? It's like I'm totally with you, and I think it must absolutely fuck with you. But at the same time, it's like I'm sure there is a quadrillion reasons why people shift weight, change, like, you know, it doesn't have to be unhealthy, it doesn't have to be like the wrong reasons whatsoever, and everybody's in the prerogative to do whatever, and that for me is like what I want to like convey, right? Like, it's like you don't have to be like plus size to love your body, to like love your imperfections. You don't have to, like, I'm not against people being skinny or people being like smaller sizes. It's just like being comfortable with who you are, and if you change who you are, still be comfortable with that process and not do it for the wrong reasons. That's like,
and as long as
the
you're
whole
doing
premise.
it in a healthy way, like I kind of feel like myself, I kind of lean more towards body neutrality than the idea of like body positivity. Although I do understand that body positivity was a movement originally built up and designed to help a community that was not being seen or represented or respected. And so there's definitely like a space for that. And I do think a lot of probably the anger from people as well, coming from like people that have been plus and then lost weight and are still continuing to talk about it, is there is a world of people that were never plus that kind of latched on to the idea of body positivity and are like making millions off of it. You know what I mean? Like these girls that are like tiny and then they kind of like move a little bit and they have like one roll and they're like, oh my God, I love myself. And I'm like, okay, but like you never walked in for a job interview and been turned away because they thought you were sloppy because of the way you looked. You know what I mean? So, or like not having the same opportunities in terms of like even shopping years ago. And obviously now you are still in a position of like privilege too. Honestly too, it's the, I know when I was just clicked on and you thought I was talking to myself earlier, there was a girl that she's been pushing for wide calf boots for years on TikTok, and she's a straight size influencer. And she posted something about like Torrid because they were like, oh, you should try Torrid. And she's like, no, like it was kind of like poo-pooing the idea. And I agree because I don't like shopping Torrid myself. I would never shop Torrid, and nothing against Torrid specifically, but I do think they like the way they kind of like market themselves. It's very like middle America. I mean, I don't need something with like, I love myself across my chest with like a cold shoulder, and like, you know what I mean? But I was like, but she was like, because of me, I've made these strides. And I was like, there's people before you that attempted to make the same strides as you, but you're straight size. You had a seat at a table that no one else did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, that, I mean, it's not that insane to me because I'm like, I feel like there was plus size influencers pushing for wide calf boots for years, but they were only getting heard or even part of the conversation from other plus size designers, like other plus size brands. Straight size brands like Dolce Vita and, you know, Steve Madden and all of those like never really took them seriously because they were plus size. And
Yeah.
now those changes are occurring, which is great because now plus size people can actually work with them as well. But I'm like, you weren't the first ones to have this conversation. You were just straight size, so people listen to you.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what I think is like, that's what I just can never wrap my head around. The fact that like people can judge somebody so hard, even though that two people are saying the same thing, you will listen to somebody more because even though they can't even relate, it's not even relevant to themselves specifically. And that
Yeah.
person just gets taken more seriously than the other person, where it's their problem and it's their, issue that this is gonna solve. I
Yeah.
find that like insane. Like it would never cross my mind to like,
It is interesting
act in
though.
that way. But it is how it works. And unfortunately, the
Yeah.
industry, fashion industry specifically, is just so hard on that. It's just like I
Yeah.
just don't understand. I just never understood the going to such lengths and such efforts to shut bigger people from the conversation. I just never really
I mean, I
understood the
think
reasoning
in
behind
my
it.
opinion, it should be more of like inviting them in. Like when I commented on her post and I was basically like, I do understand where you're coming from. And I think I want to give props to you for having pushed this movement. But I also think you need to recognize that you're not the first one to have this conversation. You are just coming from a place of privilege because of your size. And if anything, and this has happened previously in years where straight size influencers were being asked by plus size influencers, can be like, can you push for larger sizes? Can you make a comment like, or don't work with brands if they don't carry plus sizes? And like, no one really showed up and did that. There was a few, I'm not gonna like say there wasn't, but like, so the people that have lost weight that are continuing to talk about inclusivity, I want to have space for that because you're still pushing for something even though it doesn't directly affect you anymore. And I
No,
think
I
that
think that's like
you know what I
it.
mean?
They're so powerful, and also like like we can't talk about the industry discriminating the voices of people in bigger bodies, and then us discriminate like this side that we're pushing in the industry, then discriminate the people with smaller bodies trying to push for the
Yeah.
same things that we want to push for. Like I'm a size like 10 UK, like a 12 US, I think.
Yeah.
And like I understand that like I haven't experienced like the same difficulties and the same situations that you have, that the models that I've worked with and the people that I really push my work for.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me less passionate to like make sure that those voices are heard. So I completely understand being that kind of like yeah, support, like ally, just like another person
Yes.
fighting the battle, even if that battle isn't gonna directly like, it doesn't all have to be selfish.
Yeah.
but but I understand it, and it's an incredibly frustrating situation for those voices to be heard over the voices of the people that are actually
Yeah,
struggling with these issues and where it
I
actually
think maybe
matters.
that it comes to that too, because I think people are like, well, this person's continuing to get all this work and they're getting a lot more work because now they're smaller. Um, and then the other people that are larger are fighting for a place in the table and not really getting hurt at all. So it's like finding that balance. I don't know. It's a conversation I've had a little bit over the last like couple months, and I'm just like, it's definitely like very nuanced, like I said, because I do think that there's different levels to it. And like as someone that like when I first started even like shooting back in the day in New York, I was a size like 10, 12, and I was struggling from an insane fitness addiction and like was very, very thin for me, like very thin. And I remember like shooting people that were very up and coming in the plus size like influencer realm, and like they helped me like accept myself a little bit more, because I was able to see that. And like obviously I wasn't a plus size person at that point, but I was fighting from being plus size.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think there's like a lot of internal like struggle that happens with
Yeah.
people too. So and not all people are fighting it to be like, I mean, I had to work hard not to be plus size because that's where
Yeah.
my body
Yeah.
naturally wants to lie. But I think some people are just, that's, it happens. but like when they lose weight, they just can like fall into a certain size. But I don't know. I mean, again, very nuanced. I know we went on a long rambling, but
No, it's all interesting. I wanted to, because I know you have to leave soonish. I wanted to talk a little bit more about. I'd love to talk about a little bit more about your book, but also, I think it would be interesting. I know you do the model coaching sessions, you do like posing sessions,
yes.
and I think people will find it really interesting to hear a bit more about that, and maybe like the more like typical questions that you get asked. Like,
Oh, for
I
sure.
think, yeah,
Yeah, I've been doing the modeling classes. Sorry, words are hard. Modeling classes for almost 3 years now. So I basically have, I started doing them because I definitely found there was a need for it, especially more in a commercial application, because I find that like a lot of what I was seeing online in terms of modeling classes was very editorial leaning. And as someone who's been in the industry for a long time, I will tell you that a editorial doesn't really pay. So as much as it's very fun and it's, you know, it's fun to do it. Like I love shooting editorial. It's very
yeah,
exciting.
you
I
said,
just
yeah.
I want to get paid at the end of the day. Exactly. And I think especially as the majority of the world is currently like dealing with a recession, I really try to focus and hone in on what actually will get you paid at the end of the day. And so we definitely like focus more on commercial. So
Hmm.
I focus on facial expressions, I focus on hands, I focus on just like simple movements. Um, a lot of like, I call it a movement class versus like a modeling class, because I think, especially if you do a lot of commercial work, you'll know that a lot of clients prefer sort of in between, more casual, natural sort of looking movements, which is what I try to focus on.
Yeah.
Um, I have been teaching them for quite a while. It's kind of gone through multiple ranges of like when I first started, it was 2 hours, and now it's 5 hours with like a
Yeah, I was
break
gonna
in the
say two
middle.
hours is not a lot.
No, and I mean, well, when I first started, it was like sliding scale. I charged like
Mm,
$15, and now they're like
wow.
$200. But there's a lot more that we cover.
Mm,
Um, and I do multiple lighting setups and change the background, and like it's a whole thing. So, I mean, I think at some point I would like to maybe have like the first day be very simple, and then like come in with a second day where we have like a full team on set, and that would possibly be something that I like figure out in the later date.
yeah.
I love doing them, and I think they're really rewarding, and it's definitely been like a passion project. I mean, you know, they, like I said, the price has gone up, but I do feel like the amount of work that goes into the classes is a lot as
Yeah.
well. So
We work with like we worked with a lot of the same models, and I've always had like, well, I've sent people over to work with you, like people that I've scouted, people that I've worked with online,
yeah,
and I've sent them over. Everybody has such an amazing positive feedback afterwards. So yeah, anything that you do, if you turn it into a 2 day, or you continue to do them how you're doing them now, yeah, people really loving them, and it's great to hear people feeling like more inspired and more confident as well when they come out of it, on top of the obvious added, like, getting that commercial experience and just knowing how to be in front of clients, which is,
I mean, I think
yeah,
that's like the biggest thing too, is like just getting comfortable. And I think
yeah,
like the group setting is, because a lot of people have asked me about like single sessions, but I'm like, I really push for people to like take the class, because I'm like, if you really want to learn, like
see
I'm
it.
very, yeah, I think watching others move and like really like kind of learning from others is like kind of a key component in how I run the
Mm,
classes. And so I really push people to do that. And I'm like, even when you are on set with another brand and there's multiple models, like go walk over and check out what the model's doing. Like
yes,
watch and learn by doing. Um, like I think watch, learn, and then do, and then like that repetition will really help you. So I think the group component of it is really
yes,
important to me. So
yeah.
yeah.
The sessions, that like the workshops that I've done before, I don't hold them as regularly as you do, but the few that I've done in the past, that's like the main takeaway is just watching the other people, but also
Yeah.
watching yourself. I don't know about you, I really hate when there's mirrors in the studio when we're shooting, like an
Big
actual
issue.
photo shoot. I really hate it. I will always try if there is mirrors, which there usually are. I usually try to move them so that they're not in the direct like eye line of the model when they're like standing in on the set. However, when doing like the movement, like a lot of my session is focused on like posture and just how you carry yourself and like getting your like just more comfortable with the way that you just look. And it really blows people's minds like when they walk in and just how they carry themselves and how the first like few videos of the walking, the posing, and then to like when they walk out, they're just like giving off this other energy, which to me is like the most fulfilling. It's like whether
Yeah.
you're a model or not a model, I've had people come in that are like actors or just like
Same.
older women that just like have felt like just yeah, just want to
Do
get
you
more
make
confident,
them,
feel
do
better.
you make them film themselves too then?
Yes, I film them doing like some
Okay.
posing, some catwalk, different kind of catwalk, just different like just so that they
Yeah.
can see the differences, and then we'll make some changes to their posture, to their shoulders, like you know the drill, and
Yeah.
then show them the before and the after. Because also, as good as it is to like check yourself in the mirror and just be like aware of your body and stuff, sometimes they
Yeah.
get so fixated in
Yes.
their own things and their own flaws that they see,
Well, then they're not
that they
present.
don't see the whole situation.
I
So
think
showing
that's
them in a
why,
video is
yeah.
like, this is it, and this is before, and this is after, and they're like, oh wow, oh my hair, even like, yeah, everything just looks different when you carry yourself differently. I
I
think that's
usually have
like,
I usually have people like I usually set up a phone and like have them film themselves when we're doing it. And the
I,
first half of the class, or the first, not the first half, but the first like couple minutes of the class, I don't talk to the models and I just let them move, which I'm sure you know is like super, super like it's very what's the word? Um it's a little scary, like when you're on set with a photographer that doesn't talk. And so I kind of do that because
although
it
you just
happens.
frightened them to death in the first like two
Yeah, I do.
minutes.
It kind of, I mean, it kind of, because I'm like, I also want you to like know that like there's going to be times you step on set and not
Yeah,
everyone is going to be as like talkative to
yeah,
you.
friendly and everything. Yeah, you get
Yes.
everything.
And I do think the filming portion, I have people film themselves through the entire day. And I do think it's really helpful to kind of people to see the transition between like the first time they step on set to the end result.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting that you film them too. I guess I film them. I don't film them personally because I prefer to like be shooting while I do it. But do you shoot while you're filming or are you filming like,
No, we
and
do
then,
it in like sections. So like I'll film for a part of it and then I'll take pictures for another part of it. So we kind of
uh,
do it by like exercises, by like activities. So yeah, I take
okay.
it in turns to film and shoot. But I will always like, for example, like when we sit down to shoot, I will always take a few pictures of them just posing without any direction, just like let's just start with a couple pictures
And then you correct
and then
them.
I'm like, okay, now try this and now try that. And a lot of it is recreating it. I was on set with a client yesterday or the day before, and yeah, we were just taking her pictures, like econ pictures. And she's not a model or anything.
Yeah.
She's great and like is perfect for the brand, but like she's not a model herself. And we were just taking, and then I was telling her like, oh, this is how you pose and this is how you put your. And she's like, oh my God, like you just know what to do with your body. I'm like, do you know how much many hours I've spent looking at myself in the mirror? Do
Yeah,
you know how much I practice these poses so that when I can be on set, I can show the model and I can show you and I can like translate them and like
totally.
understand like how they work. And obviously different bodies do move differently and shape differently. And just because I know what my body looks like doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's going to work on everybody. But at least for me, it gives me like such a confidence when I'm explaining and when I'm expressing like the movements and the postures and like she got it like immediately and it was just
Yeah.
like oh okay and there's a before and after in the images that she could immediately tell. She was like, oh my God, wow, like we should have done this sooner. I'm like, well, we only shot today, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um so I think like the biggest thing, and I know it sounds kind of cheesy and stuff, but I will always recommend is just like practicing in front of the mirror with kind eyes, with like that's when you really have to show self-love, especially if you have insecurities, which we all have them. Looking at yourself in the mirror from a lens of just trying to like see yourself and just trying to learn how you move and all of those things rather than seeing yourself in the mirror to like feel
Yeah.
shit about yourself later.
I actually
It's all a
tell people
process.
I tell people to film themselves on the back camera.
So they can't see it. Yeah.
I'm like, just set up your camera and then move on camera. That way, because I hate mirrors. I hate, like, I agree with you because people tend to hyperfixate. I don't even like, and I do it because I feel like I have to at this point. I like tethering, but I don't like people to see what I'm doing when I'm shooting. I mean, I do occasionally, like after we're done with the look, I'm like, yeah, you can scroll through and like take a peek and you can kind of see, but I don't like people to hyperfixate in the moment because then they start hyper analyzing every single angle. And I'm like, you cannot do that. Also, like from a brand standpoint, if you were working with a client, like you can't be like, the client loves this shot and I prefer this angle. And like the client doesn't care. You gotta have to get out of your head. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you got paid for that job. And maybe it's different if you were like working with someone that wants headshots or something. But like for a model, at the end of the day, you're getting paid. It's a job. You can't control really how that final outcome looks like. You can only control what you do in front of the camera. And to an extent, I've had some people be like, well, this is my good side. I'm like, again, the brand does not care. Like you can't tell the brand, this is my good side.
It boils my blood when people say that, like, oh, this is my good side, so we're only going to take pictures from this side. I'm like, no, sorry,
you are a model. Every single photo in your book to have one side of your face.
You signed up to be a model. Nobody's like forcing you to be here. Like you are a model by choice, so like by default, you have to be comfortable with all the sizes of your face, all the like from both sides, from both profiles, like doing different things, smiling, not smiling. People that are like, oh, I don't want to smile, and I'm like, well, you just got booked by this like really happy, bubbly, bold company that's paying you a lot of money to be here to smile. So you are definitely going to smile. So go in the bathroom and get used to it and come back because that's what we're doing now. So yeah, that is different, but I find it quite interesting. Because when I shoot, like I whether I'm tethering or I'm not tethering, depending what we're doing, I always show the pictures, and
I show people photos for sure, but I don't like people to hyper focus on what's actually happening. Sometimes I'll just speed through the photos and I'm like, I really like what you're doing here. Let's play with that more. And then like just move from there. I'm not like, don't let them like look too closely here or like at their body, you know?
But I've had like maybe more reactions that are like they see the pictures and they're like they get surprised. They're like, oh wow, I thought I looked different. They thought they looked worse in their heads than what they actually like were posing. So for the most part, but yeah, I've also had a lot of experiences where I show them the pictures and they get hyper fixated and then they get in their heads.
I think you can kind of read them too.
But you can read them for sure. Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you. I think you need to go.
Well, no, I can stay for like.
Oh, you can stay for a little bit? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, we went through a long ramble and then I had in and out.
That's okay. It's all been cool. Yeah, so do you want to finish it off talking a little bit more about your amazing book? Tell us like when it's coming out. Tell us what you can tell us.
So I was approached in last year to do a coffee table book, and this is the first plus size coffee table book of its kind. There has been books previously that were like featuring curve and disabled people, which is amazing, like certain disabilities. I forget exactly who did that book, but I think it was self-published. I believe it was called Curve, but I've been working on it this last year during the height of like what has been a very weird year, as we've covered already today. But it basically kind of covering plus size editorial, plus size fashion. I'm featuring plus size beauty because I feel like not enough plus size models really get a lot of beauty campaigns. I do think that's starting to slightly change, which is amazing. I think I'm starting to see more and more. I'm not really like a beauty photographer, but it's definitely been interesting sort of challenging myself throughout this entire process. And then I'm doing a body section as well. So that's swim, lingerie and nudes. I just started shooting some nudes for it, which has been kind of exciting. Not doing like full frontal or anything crazy, but you know, a little bit of occasionally, just because we wanted it to be still like seller friendly, where I'm not going to be too overt with it. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's been very challenging. I was working with a smaller publication, so the advance was pretty small, but I'm very excited about it. I've worked with some amazing models. My team has been amazing. I've worked with some amazing brands. I think Curvy Couture has been like I want to like really talk about them because they've been so amazing. They've sent me so many pairs of like so many product for this shoot. It's very hard because like lingerie is like a big one. I can't like really buy and return that as easily. So I really appreciate them for that. Also, Thistle Inspire has been amazing. Actually, Dolce Vita has sent me some Circus by Sam Edelman, Sleeper. There's been like a few brands that I just like have been really amazing and helping with the project. I did like my head hope was to reach out to a few more brands, but I will say because of the shift in what's happening right now, it's been a lot harder expected. And so I've mostly been self-styling everything myself, which I'm a photographer, I'm not a stylist. By the end of this year, I think I would call myself a stylist. I did add it to my profile actually on Instagram because I'm like, at this point, I'm a fucking stylist. Just because I haven't had much of a choice. It's like I kind of have to now, because there hasn't been, you know, a lot of the stylists that I know that were originally down to do the book just have not been working and can't really afford to do a full pull for something that they're not getting paid for, which I fully understand. It's been so difficult with that. It's funny because have you ever like done a book or have you talked to anyone about doing books before?
No, the closest that I've done that for is my final major project at uni, which was like 7 years ago.
Okay.
I did a book, all plus girls, mostly styled by me because trying to find a stylist that styled
Especially
curve models 7 years ago.
Too.
Yeah, that's actually how I kind of started working with maybe it was a bit longer ago anyway, but like 7, 8-ish years ago. That's kind of how I started working with bridge models and how that relationship started, because I reached out to every agency in the UK and not even that many had any curve models, and the curve models they had were not curve. So that's kind of how I started working with bridge, and bridge were happy to just literally be like, this is all our models, just do your thing. So that was my kind of experience with it, but it was self-published. There's like 4 copies in the world.
I mean, even doing, because I mean, technically I would say this book is self-published too, because the advance I got was so low that like it has not covered anything. And like I mean, because it's like in terms of like what we're used to expecting from like if you think about like an econ job, like the low rate for most photographers is like $2,500. And so like if you think about that, my entire amount was maybe like 4 to 5. That's how much money I was given. So it's like an extremely low amount of money. Oh, you froze again.
Yeah.
Are you there?
What's happening? It's okay. Yeah. That is insane. That's like what you're supposed to work with and do magic, right? Like maybe by the end of the year you can add to your bio stylist and magician.
Literally. And I'm like, and it's also like it's been frustrating dealing with that too, because it's also like a slow period for a lot of us as well. So I'm like self-producing a book on top of like not really having that many jobs coming through other than like model tests and stuff. And I will say that like model workshops has been helping. I do one of those a month, and those are pretty lucrative. It's a lot of work though. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I do make a decent amount of money. It's a good day for me if I can fill the class. But again, it's a lot of work because I'm dealing with multiple people on set. Usually the classes are 5 to 10 people, so that's a lot of personalities. But yeah, it's been I'm excited about the book. I just feel like I don't think enough people really talk about how much work goes into a book, and like a lot of people that I know that have done books end up deeply. And so like it's been a challenge doing it. And I'm just
Yeah.
thankful for the people I know. Like my hair and makeup team has been amazing. They've pretty much done the majority of it for like free or knowing that they're going to get paid at a later date,
Yeah.
which is hard for me because I don't like to do that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think
So
you should be incredibly proud. I can't wait to see the book. The little sneak peeks that are on your Instagram are just
thank
beautiful.
you.
So, I can't wait to see it all together. Do we know more or less when it could come out?
Yes. So the goal is, speaking of Fashion Week, the goal is to launch late next year. So I would hope around Fashion Week, probably in October, I think. I'll probably have like a launch party in New York around September and then maybe do like some like pre-orders or whatever. But then we're hoping to get it out for the holiday season, obviously, because I think that's
Yeah.
probably like the best time. But also I think given the state of everything, I think it's really good to push it during Fashion Week because I think
Yeah, for sure.
size inclusivity is such a hot topic already. And so that's kind of the goal. So
Amazing. Well, please let me know in advance because I would love to be there for the party, and support the book in any way because
thank
like you said, like it's an incredibly challenging thing to do in the industry and in our niche of the industry.
yeah,
But it's so important and it's so beautiful and your work is amazing and yeah, we should all celebrate it and hope that there's more funds to do more stuff like this.
yeah. My hope is that this is just the first book. My
Yeah.
intention was to do like street style and like location work too. But then I've been dealing with
Yes,
like a
that's the
lot of
dream.
chronic pain stuff this year, so it just wasn't in the cards for me. So I'm like, I'm hoping if I do another book, the advance will be much larger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I'm hoping I'll be able to fund it a little bit better. And I did go with a really small publishing house. So like the advance they gave me, was very large for them.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah. Yeah.
it may feel low to me considering what I do on a day-to-day basis, but for them it was a very large risk. Um, One that I hope, they'll feel good about at the end of the day, but it's like, I do understand that I'm not used to this like book publishing thing. So it's definitely like an interesting place to be. So
Yeah, for sure. Very, very
yeah.
exciting. So yeah, send me the info. I
I will.
will try and spread it as much as I can as well. And yeah, best of luck. I'm sure it will be the first of many.
I hope so.
I hope so. Well, Lydia, thank you so much for your time. This has been really fun, really cool. It's nice to see you again. Hopefully see you in New York next time.
Yes.
Yeah, and good luck with everything.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Of course.